Are you wasting your time and money on inefficiencies in the business? Are sales down and lead conversion rates are low? Are you having problems building or maintaining inventory levels? What does it really take to win in the automotive industry?
Get the cars that make sense for your store rather than just wishing at an auction, so it gives you that better control.
With over 25 years of experience, Daryl the Wolf Steed isn't just another industry voice. He's the guy who's out there solving real problems for dealers just like you.
They'll even say in the Pacific Northwest where you're at that it's a tougher market. It's, tougher to find cars. The market's a little bit softer. And in the midst of all this, your turn doubled and your profit's up 75%.
Yes.
The truth hurts only when it should. Are you ready to hear the truths? Daryl is here to unpack the hard truths and the proven strategies that will take your dealership from struggling to soaring. And he is taking it all in the streets, with real talk, open dialogue, unfiltered conversations. This is the podcast series, Street Smarts, powered by Smart Wolf Consulting.
Good morning, everybody. It is Tuesday, January 21st, 2025. Magical day today. So, guys, we are on the precipice of NADA 2025. I will be there, Smart Wolf Consulting, Street Smarts, doing a couple of speaking engagements, as well as connecting with people, having conversations, and really trying to bring information to the forefront of that implementation and training strategy, whether it be the training academy or you're looking for a hybrid hands-on option of, the ability to stop sitting back and taking control and really get ahead of things. Today I wanted to come on because, when you look at it is, yes, as many of you have heard, that we make our own economy. If you're ever on All Things Used Cars on Clubhouse, which is true, but there is a troubling market ahead. And when you look at it, it's, I would hate for anyone to be like, man, I'm really surprised, or I didn't know this was coming. So let's make sure we really discuss what's happening in the market, what's on the horizon. And then more importantly, because this is what it's all about, is what you can do right now to ensure that you can navigate or eliminate some of these challenges that are coming. So in 2025, market estimates are that this is going to be one of the most, if not the hardest year for used car operations that we've seen in the last 10. And we ask why that is. Well, simply put, is that there is a lack of used cars. We didn't have leasing when the year of COVID, which then took a 3-year slump. We have missed leasing projections over the last 3 years or 2.5 years. And so we're not having enough cars come back in. Consumers are keeping their car and driving them more. So we have more miles on vehicles than ever before, which is now putting a compression of what you get to what the value is or what the customers would pay for. Case in point, a 120,000 mile car 10 years ago was a $9,000 to $12,000 car. It was a cheap entry-level commuter car, something you could keep for a couple of years. Now, that 120,000 mile car is still $20,000 in most cases. And you have to ask yourself, who's really wanting to spend $20,000 or $400 or $500 a month for a car that may or may not last for them for another 2 to 3 years? So you have that going on in the market. More importantly is, as many of you heard some of these industry experts say, from David Spizak to David Long to Brian Kramer, is that we're on this constant wheel, hamster wheel, rotation wheel of continually doing the same exact things, but expecting different results, AKA insanity. And, constantly saying, well, this is how we've always done it, and we've somehow figured out a way. Well, I've somehow figured out how to gain and or lose weight. That doesn't mean that they're effective or less effective. So we have to ask ourselves, are we doing everything in our power to make sure that we're putting ourselves on a great path to success? Now, I would argue that we're probably not, because we look at these used car operations and stores, and I have a couple of notes of conversations I've been having with dealers this week ahead of NADA, and I found it really interesting. For instance, when times get tough or when we have to grind, right? When we're not in that really exciting market where things just kind of make sell, like the traffic just comes in, is we see people pulling back and we see people saying, well, hey man, like, we've got to pull back. We've got to make sure we make the right decisions. Well, I'm just curious, like, let's get down to that real great word of consistency. If you had a strategy, if you had a process, if you had a mission, why are we changing this strategy or like, what's going on? So of course I asked dealers this, like, why would, like, hey guys, this is what we had going on. Why are we changing it? Things are working or we're making progress. And they're like, well, we've got to be real careful with our capital. We're not selling as many cars, which means we're not making as many cars or making as much money. So, our capital is getting tight. Well, I would tell you, if that's the case and you're living on borrowed money, and you can only operate out of a flooring line and you don't have the capital, you're already in trouble, right? You're playing the Vegas odds. It's like you're chasing the winning buck. And so when you think about that, that's extremely interesting of like, oh, we don't have enough capital. Well, if you pull back and you stop taking that risk, or you don't buy into your strategy, I would argue with you should have never started to start with, or you should have had a different strategy. But more importantly is what's going to happen now that you buy less cars? Well, I can give you a case study right now. There was a very large used car operation doing very well in COVID, the year before COVID, the years after COVID. And then they decided, you know what, we're going to tighten things up. We're going to pull back. Well, they pulled back and lost about 60% production from their acquisition strategy. And this was 95% private party, service drive, and trade-ins, 5% from other sources. Well, shockingly enough, going from buying, and let's just use a round number of 200 cars a month in acquisition from all these sources to, let's say, 80 or 90, what do you think happened? Well, it's pretty simple, guys. Math is math. They started selling less cars. When you don't have it, you can't sell it. I learned this when I went to Used Car Palooza, is you can't sell from empty shelves. And that's 100% true. Now, I'm not saying that you need a 400 car inventory to sell 400 cars, but you do need to keep that strategy going, and it does need to stay there because it's the same thing of being on a wheel. But once you put the pedal to the metal and you get that thing going, if you pull back, it's actually a bigger disruption than ever starting. And so now they're selling about 100 less cars a month. Now, whether you're on a velocity model, a volume model, a gross model, that's going to take a hit to your bottom line. Now, what do you think ends up happening from there, guys? Yep, you got it. They pulled back advertising because they're not making as much money. So now they've compressed the issue. They pulled back advertising, and then they said, okay, now we're going to try to be real surgical. We're going to tighten our purse strings, and we're not going to buy as much, and we're really going to buckle down. And now we're selling less cars, so now we got to do less advertising. So now we're going to have less eyeballs. You see where this just perpetuates this like constant cycle of failure and insanity, and we build our own issues. So the other part of consistency, guys, is the mission. Like when you're going to build something out, or you say, this is what we're going to do, how do you expect to have long-term success? Is this something we were doing for a month, 2 months, 3 months? We're trying it. That's what we're doing. We're going to try this out. Well, guess what, guys? If you haven't heard it before, the moment you use the word try, you already failed. And you might as well not start, because try is not actually an action. It's a thought. It can never be an action. And if you don't believe that, try to do anything and then tell me you didn't do it. You can't try to do anything, guys. Once you do it, you've either done it or you didn't do it. So try is a thought process of you're telling yourself you're going to try, and inevitably you've basically given yourself a way out to fail. Well, we tried. Well, that means you didn't give 100% because you already have that in your backbone of we're trying it. You've got to be 100% all in on everything that you're going to do. And that gets me to the next point of this challenging market is, so we know that used cars have more miles than typically they have before. We know that the age of used cars is older than typical because people are keeping them now. We went from a 4-year cycle to a 6 to 7 year cycle of ownership. So now we have older cars that are more expensive, that have higher miles, that we have no real balance of how to market those because we haven't had to do that in the past. The cars that are newer, or the current model year type vehicles that 3 years or less, are more expensive than ever before. So that affects affordability. So then you obviously have to get those to where you can put those in an affordable area for consumers. Otherwise, you're driving traffic to new cars, which is perfectly fine if you have a great strategy there. And then we boggle ourselves up with we don't have enough capital, or we're borrowing money against a flooring line. So now we want to only do this, or we only want to do this, or we can only buy this, or we can only buy that, which limits your options. And then we get to the real crux of everything is, I saw a couple posts today. Give a shout out to Frank. I see he had posted some comments. Frank Knox, an industry leader, actually probably one of the more brilliant minds in the used car industry, and talking about all these tools that are out there, which kind of spurred this conversation that I wanted to jump on here with. Is there are at least 10, if not 20 different tools that are out there, but 10, we'll say, recognizable, or people that are using them in an everyday aspect. Now, I have some that I think are better than others. I think some are kind of fugazi in the sense of they say transparency, but they aren't transparent. So it puts you in a bad position. However, you get these tools, lead providers, whatever they may be. And let's get into the real crux of why we have a troubled market ahead. Well, how are you training your people? Who's ensuring the implementation is done in the store and built for success? Or are we treating this like everything else we've treated in the auto industry for the last 50 years, which is, hey guys, we're going to kind of throw this together and like with some duct tape and some baling wire and some bubble gum. And we're going to say, all right, let's give it a whirl and let's see what we got. Or we take our sales manager he was a really good salesperson. He's a okay desk guy manager, and he's going to train everybody how to buy cars because he's been so successful at never doing it before that we're going to give him the opportunity to train all our people. So when I saw this post, I was like, this is great, right? Let's get all the information on the tools because every tool is going to be a little different from per the market and to the stores. But how are you handling implementation and training? How are you ensuring that you're building something that's going to last? Because if you're going to try something, attempt something, and you're not going to build it to last, why are you even starting? You'll actually cost yourself more money to switch or to diversify your acquisition strategy because you'll end up doing things so badly or risking things that you don't understand that then you'll be like, this is why we never did it. Implementation is the key. So a lot of people ask what I do, and I build buying centers. I build acquisition strategies, buying centers. But it's not through the tools. I can recommend tools. I can get you the right tools. We can look at it. It's the implementation and coaching. And the implementation and coaching, I firmly believe, is where the success model lives. Who's going to make sure that all the little particulars are built out right? Who's going to hold you accountable to the things that you said you wanted to do? Who's going to hold the office staff accountable to what they need to do? Who's going to hold the buyers accountable to what they need to do? And then more importantly, as we're training them, developing them, and getting them to a point that they should be able to do this on their own in the year, 2 year, 3 year, depending on how large you're trying to scale this out to where you have a sustainable model moving forward, is the coaching. So I've heard a lot of conversations about getting AI buyers or offsite buyers and things of that nature. And I'm kind of conflicted with this because I do believe that if you can have someone set appointments like a BDC, that's all well and good, except for the fact what happens when you get buyers or you get this AI methodology and there's an objection that can't be answered right away, or there's a disconnect where it takes you an hour, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it may be to get a value to a customer. More importantly, when they set the appointment, they have never been in your store. They don't understand how things work. So then there's a disconnect when they get here to where it does not meet and it's not symmetry in motion for the acquisition strategy, the consumer experience. If you want to fail and you want to fail quickly, okay, have an immediate disconnection to that consumer experience from online to in-store retail strategies, right? And so when we think about this troubling market provides all these different speed bumps and things that we have to navigate. And you have to ask yourself, what are you doing to navigate this, right? Like, what are we doing in this industry? And I challenge everybody to look at your implementation plan. Look at, getting a specialist, whether it's myself, whether it's another industry leader, there is a couple of them out there, is who's going to implement for you and not implement from afar, right? They've got to be in your store. They need to know the DNA and the breakdown of your store and where those speed bumps are to actually build something out customizable to your store. Not every store is the same. So getting anybody who comes in as a coach and says, oh yeah, here you go, here's a book and processes and this will work, I would challenge that and I'd be suspect of that. My store's different than the store down the street and the store down the street from there. You're going to need a customization and someone that understands all the ebbs and flows of what that looks like so that they can build that for you to be successful, not for it might be successful if you do these things. If you change everything that you do in your store, then you'll have success. What if you only need to tweak one thing and then we can build everything around your strategy? So when we think about that, how are you navigating the used car market, right? Do you have an implementation strategy and a coaching strategy? Somebody that's not in it that can actually give you the hard truths. As Smart Wolf Consulting always says, is the truth hurts only when it should. Well, that's really important, because if you're not in it, I'm not sitting there with you all the time, I can actually identify the things that you might miss. Now, the last thing that I think we probably need to go over, and it's every dealer has these, and I think we need to address this and at least start the conversation. So I encourage Frank, David Spizak, Glenn, David Long, any of these guys to have a different view, or we can take this into another forum to talk about it. Is, when we pack our vehicles, I get it, it's dealers' money. So what I'm about to talk about is I guess heresy to even bring up. However, I hear it all the time. I actually heard it from 3 dealers today. It's one of the things on my notes right here, okay, is packs and profit strategies. Is okay, we're going to say the car is going to be $2,000 or $2,500 a recon, estimated guesses and things of that nature. Then we have a pack, and that could be $600, $700, $800, $1,000. Then we have another pack, and that could be, and then we say, well, we can't buy that car because if we buy it after recon and packs and everything else, we can't make any profit on it. Okay, let's just go down that road for a minute. If we're going to pack our vehicles because we don't want to pay commissions or to cover costs or whatever it may be, that's perfectly acceptable to obviously ensure that you have protected your bottom line. But now we have to ask ourselves is, have you protected it so much that you no longer have a retail strategy because you're trying to be too safe? You're trying to ensure that you have no risk whatsoever, which inherently is how you create more risk, is when you try to take all risk out of it. So I asked you, when you pack these vehicles, or what your strategy is, do you then have a balanced strategy? If you're going to pack these vehicles and it looks like you're losing money, but you're not, do you have a balanced strategy for your fixed operations and your F&I operations for your used cars, to where that's how you measure success? I'm going to leave you that for a second. Just think about that for a second. So you have this conversation, GMs, GSMs, directors, whatever it may be, and you say, well, hey, man, we're losing money on these cars. Every car, we're losing like $1,500. Okay, are you? Are you? Let's ask that question. Do you have $2,000 worth of packs? And so when you say you're losing $2,000, you're showing a $2,000 loss, but really, in essence, you're making $500? Now, I get it. You're not happy there. You want to make more. Who doesn't? I'm not sitting there and saying be satisfied with that. But let's not sit there and lie to yourself. And if that is the case, what does your back end look like? What does your finance income look like? What does your fixed operations income look like? That's a true acquisition strategy, gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen, is what does your acquisition strategy look like from a profit standpoint, being that it meets all 3 phases of your operation, right? When you sell a used car and you acquire used cars, it touches fixed ops, parts and service, it touches finance, and it touches sales. All 3 pieces. So you have to ask yourself, when you lose this money, or you say you lose this money because you've measured it a certain way for so many years, but now the market's changed, your measurement standards are no longer correct, and to be fair, ineffective. Because if I'm making $1,000 to $1,200 in fixed operations every time a car goes into my shop, net, right, after all expense, right? Let's say it's a $2,000 row, but I'm netting $1,200. And then I make $2,500 in F&I, and that comes out to a net of, let's just say, $1,800. And then I make $500 on the front, and it is like a net zero. Let's just say after commissions, everything else, we're on a zero. That's still $3,000 of profit to your store. And if you did that 100 times, that's $300,000 of net profit. Now you have to ask yourself, are you measuring it correctly? Does your consistency to mission, strategy, and process make sense? Have you built in your own speed bumps to make yourself fail because of your inaccuracies to measure correctly, or measure within your strategy? So, and maybe it's not even incorrect, is the way you're measuring it is completely hypocritical to the process and strategy you've put in place. I just challenge everybody when we're looking at this is, guys, let's think about this in a more holistic way to where you can be more effective all the way around. Right? If the end game is to acquire more trades and bring more customers into your dealership to grow your business for the long term, then we have to start looking at the business in a different way. We have to. It's not a matter of like, we're not ready or we're going to finally catch up or this or that or any of these other things. We have to look at it in a different way, because the only way we're going to grow it as compressions get tighter, as the cost of acquisition goes up, but the sales side based on affordability stays the same, compression tightens. So how do we measure it is, okay, where we're making the money and having to do it more often. So the old school or the more safe way of doing it is like, I'll do low volume and high gross. I'm not saying that's ineffective, but then to sit there and think that you're going to outperform the market with this methodology just won't work, because how many cars are you finding to buy so much cheaper? And if you guys didn't know, the study just came out and it showed that over or when someone comes in or they're acquiring or you get a lead or anything of nature, right from go, before we've even made a phone call, the average consumer has 2.6 offers from other competitors and up to 4 to 5 offers for certain generations. Think about that. So now if you're not competitive and you don't have a different business strategy and you don't know how to measure it so that you can see you're being successful by gaining market share and increasing your customer base, which in turn increases your fixed operations, which increases your chances of referral business and be-back business in the future, then you're going to be like, well, nope, we're not matching that. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. You're setting yourself up to fail. So why would you ever be surprised? I mean, like, I don't understand. Like, I mean, what's going on? What's this? I mean, if you want the real, like crazy, like, holy shit, like what is going on? I'm on the conversation with a rental company, and and I'm not an overly huge fan, but to give you an idea of how crazy the market shifted, guys, really, I mean, just get a pen and paper, because when I share this with you, it will blow your mind. You can go to the auction, okay? For those of you guys that still are like, I'm going to the auction. Okay, listen, I'm not a big fan of it. I think it should be a surgical situation where you're going after very particular cars, because if you have a great service drive, great trade process, and private party acquisition, the auction should be the smallest piece of your pie. But not everyone agrees. But did you know you can go to the auction right now with the average acquisition cost of just short of 94% cost to market? 94%. So you have a 6% spread to stay into that market profitability, and you still got to do a safety, smog, in some areas, find some profits, things of that nature. And then you've got to deal with arbitration. You got to deal with cars that maybe have some stuff that aren't disclosed, or we have to ask ourselves, why are they getting rid of them at auction? If cars are so hard to find, why would they want to get rid of this? So there's probably a problem. Or you can buy a rental vehicle. I equally hate those just as much. I'm not a big fan, but they do have their place in today's market. Is you can buy that, reduce fees, car gets brought to you. Okay. And it's about as great as it can be when it comes to arbitration, because they'll take it back if there's any issues. So when you think about that, is how the market has changed is rental vehicles are as valuable, if not easier to get, and not saying you're going to make money on them, but they're less of a risk than any auction vehicle out there. Think about that. When was there ever a time we would have thought like, man, I'm safer buying a rental car than I am going to the auction and hedging or risking or gambling on whatever I'm going to get from somebody else? That's nuts. Now, the reason I bring that up is I'm talking to one rental car agency, then another one, and one of them tells me, well, we have a lot of cars coming out and we're selling them too fast. Oh my Lord, I don't even understand what's happening when I'm hearing this conversation. He says, so they've been instructed to now raise all their prices. Now, mind you, their prices are already $1,000 at average over MMR. $1,000 over MMR. It's nuts, right? And now they've been told to raise them again. Why? Because there's always some huckleberry out there that's going to overpay because they're reactive, because they have no proactive situation, because they have no strategy, and they have one banner weekend, or they have a couple good days. They sell some cars and they're like, oh my God, we're out of cars. We got to get cars. We're empty. We got to do this. And so then they take advantage of those people. So you think about that. So now you're going to pay more for a rental. You're going to buy rentals. You're going to buy auction cars to operate at a loss on the front. Not saying it's not a strategy for the back and fixed ops. As I said, your strategy has to meet how you're going to measure. But who's going to implement this for you? Who's going to keep you on track? Who's going to give you the consistent reports? Who's going to make sure that you've got the right strategy and build it out to where you have long-term success, not we're successful for 2 months and then we fail. To give you guys another example, I was actually at a store talking to a store, and they explained to me how they were having this great amount of success with ICO and getting vehicles. And they made a couple of changes because it either wasn't working out or, which I don't understand because they were having great success. And they made some changes, and now they couldn't close a wet paper bag. They went from buying 15 to 20 cars and doing pretty good based on the leads to closing ratio to now maybe getting 1 or 2. Well, what did we change? Did we stay the course? Did we change our methodology? Did we change our advertising? There's all these moving pieces. This is why implementation and training and coaching is so important to somebody that understands how this works. And, obviously I'm doing a podcast and I talk about what I'm available to do and what I can do and the success that I've proven over 14 years of doing buying centers and acquisition before buying centers and acquisition was even a word. But we're always looking for this faster, easier way. Well, I'm going to get AI. AI is going to help me buy cars. Okay. Doesn't solve your issue of in-store success. So they can make you 100 appointments. You come in, get 100 appointments to the store, and you only buy 4 cars. Was AI successful or was it a failure? The answer is yes. It was both. Because if you don't have the strategy behind the in-store operation and the customer interaction, then you don't have a strategy. You have half a strategy, half a plan, and half the execution. So I challenge everybody on the back of NADA, guys. This is a big year. 2025 could be the biggest year for used car operations if you wanted it to be. But what does your strategy look like? What does your implementation look like? What does your consistency look like? And are you ready to take that challenge of like, you know what? I'm ready to take it from the streets back into my store and do the smarter way to buy and sell cars with Street Smarts? Or are you looking to just say, you know what? We're going to keep doing what we've always been doing because it's been so effective that we're in the position we're in now, which is making less money, selling less cars, and dealing with the adversity of having average at best talent to work with, right? We have to ask ourselves that question. Now, how you make people more talented is you dive into them, you invest into them, you give them the proper tools and coaching and guidance to give them the confidence to do what they need to do. And that's where a lot short with the lead providers is they will show you how to do one thing, or they'll show you to have a conversation, but they don't show you how to practically do it in a real life situation. And so I ask you guys this is if we're ready to take care of used cars, we're ready to have a used car department that drives you more new car traffic, more trades, okay, more profits in all 3 departments, measuring it differently, of course, because we have to decide where we want to measure it. Then it's time to act now, whether you're looking for an academy, a hybrid version, a full-on Smart Wolf experience where it's where we come in and we build it together. But guys, don't sit on the sidelines. Don't be surprised by the struggle. Don't sit there and constantly tell yourself, well, we'll figure it out, or, well, this is what it is. And last and not least, right, when you're thinking about doing something, you said, okay, look, we're going to do this. Definitely write down your plan. Write it down, figure it out, right? Be methodical about this. But don't be that person that overthinks it and then doesn't make a decision for weeks on end. If you're ready to do something, or if you're even kind of ready to do something, act. Act now, act fast, act today. Because the only thing that passes by is the most valuable asset. And if you haven't figured out what that asset is, it's time. Every day that you waste without action, you're affecting everyone around you, okay, to include your store. Make a decision and act. But don't be surprised when you struggle. Don't be surprised when you fail, because the only thing you can control is not being surprised, simply by making an action and committing to said action. Right? Street Smarts coming to you guys today, Tuesday before NADA. I will be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And just so everybody knows, like, if you guys see me, it'll be hard to miss me. But let's have a conversation. Let's figure out how I can help you guys get through 2025, create a great acquisition implementation strategy, and make more money for you this year more than you did last year. And more importantly, you guys, just remember two things, okay? The truth hurts only when it should. So anything here that maybe kind of ruffled your feathers, that's what it's meant to do, is challenge the status quo too, is that I hope you guys got some insights today that would help you guys make a decision, make an action, or move forward to taking control and giving back to your people and building a business around them. I hope to see everybody at NADA and having great conversations. Until next time, this is Street Smarts powered by Smart Wolf Consulting, okay, saying thank you guys for the opportunity and talk to you soon.